Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Interesting. Okay. I think it's all happening. I guess we're going to start this show in a second. And I'm going to bang this out before I head up to another country. Let's see. Okay. Looks like I have audio and it looks like I have picture. Let's just make sure everything's working out here. And one of the things that I need to sort out here is what time of day is the best to do these live streams, because I've been trying to do them around midday here, Eastern time. Actually don't need these headphones, and seems to be relatively decent in terms of an audience. Trying to do something that's at around lunchtime and morning time in the States, and then would be sort of, getting towards evening time over in Europe. Got a couple of people here, so let's get started. Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here with the C47, and it's another live stream. It is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017, and I am actually inside the house today. And I'm inside the house because I am about to get in the car and drive to the airport, because I'm going up to Toronto for some training. And I'm actually not doing the teaching this time. I'm going to do some training at the ARRI Academy, and I'm really excited about that. As always, with the live streams, it's an open forum for questions about production, cameras, lighting, pre-production, anything that is production related. And so if you have a question that's on your mind, you're trying to figure out something right now, and we're talking about timely stuff because you have a project coming up, or you're trying to figure out a purchasing decision and that kind of stuff, then please ask away. I have live chat here. Last time we had a pretty lively episode. When this gets archived, of course, you don't see the questions that come up in the live stream, but what I do is I will read them back as I go through those questions so that they will be part of the archive and you'll know what people were asking about. I am, hey Zlatko, good to see you again. I am going to be talking about lenses today, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about that. There were some lens announcements this morning in the wee hours. I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't go back to sleep, so I checked my phone, which I shouldn't do, but I do very often times, and Fujinon had announced a couple of new exciting lenses that we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about today. Somebody made a comment to me separately from the YouTube channel that maybe I should increase the quality and not do as much quantity of content at the moment as I'm doing these live streams. And it's a conscious decision to take a little bit of a hit here to get content out. They do say that content is king. I don't know if my content is king, but I am going to use this forum here to let all this stuff play itself out, and as it does, of course, the quality will get better in terms of picture quality, because trust me, I'm a stickler. But right now I'm at a 2500 megabits per second stream, and that's going to take a hit in terms of what's coming in. Great stuff. Always more geek. Yes, I'm happy to do as much geek as you guys want. The difference between a geek and the nerd is geeks have social skills. So maybe which one am I? I don't know. So I only have about 25 minutes today, because at 1 o'clock Eastern time, I do in fact have to make sure that everything's packed up and I'm in the car and I am driving. So if you start now, how much will you invest in gear and how much in education? Well, the short answer to that, Zlatko, before we get into these lenses, is the type of work you do will dictate what type of gear you need to get, and whether or not you're going to buy that gear, rent that gear, or do a combination of both. I've been at this for maybe longer than I'd like to admit. I'd say that I've been doing production pretty consistently. And by the way, the sound quality is going to be worse today because I am using the actual webcam because I just needed to bang this out and make sure I got an episode in. I'll be back Monday's episode to the regular audio. So sorry. So gear is going to be dictated by the type of work that you do. And education is never ending. If you found that this area and what we do for a living is your passion, then you should never stop learning. And if you find that you're not interested anymore, then you're either continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again and you're bored, or this is not the field for you. Because for me personally, and this is not even just speaking as an educator, I spend a lot of time educating myself on the craft of video production and filmmaking. And in some ways, I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface, even though I teach this for part of my living. And I think that that's the way a lot of us feel, is there is a never-ending ability to learn more. And we also go through phases in terms of our styles and the way we like to work. And that also comes about from continuing our education. So you may have lit a certain way, you know, in the past, and then you either learn something new or you were inspired by something and you decide to light a different way. And that's sort of a journey and a progression, I think, that everybody takes. Thanks for the heads up. Old Wave 1, whomever that is, that it does actually sound fine. Yeah, it's not the worst microphone in the world, but it's not as good as a podcaster or the USB NT from RØDE. So did the picture freeze for some reason? Because I'm looking over at a different web browser on a different computer and my face looks like this. So I don't know if it has frozen or not. Can somebody answer that for me and let me know? Because it does seem like the stream is healthy. So as long as you guys can see it, that's fine. And of course, what I really want to see is your questions. So if you can let me know that, fine. I'm going to actually refresh that page. So what happened today? Well, today we got some announcements, and we got some announcements having to do with new lenses. And I think that something's happened here. Just give me 1 second, everybody. And I apologize for this. I'm just going to force quit the browser on this other computer, which is the way I have it set up right now to see your questions. And then when I come back, I will be able to answer them. So, so Fujinon announced 2 Cine zooms today. And it's pretty interesting. You know, they made a decision to make some very lightweight zooms. And I think that what they have come up with is going to serve a big part of the market. Again, I'm just typing in and just trying to get my page back up so I can see your questions. You know, so this is what they did. Let me share my screen with you guys so you can see that. So I'm going to switch over. That's Mimo Live, which is a software that I use for basically handling all of this stuff when I do the show. And we're going to go over to newshooter.com, which happens to be one of my bigger resources in terms of where I get my information having to do with the industry. I know those guys very well, and there's other sites that I go to as well, but I have a soft spot for those guys over at Newshooter. So, so this is what, I don't know what the heck is going on over here, but here we go. Here we go. For me, it's good. I'm getting some feedback here. Old Wave 1 is an old guy. I froze for 10 seconds. Everything's back. Bob's your uncle. Okay, so let's get into it then. Okay, so Fujinon announces the MK18-55 millimeter T2.9, which is about a an F 2.75. So we'll just round that up to a 2.8. And the MK50-135 T2.9. Difference between T-stops and F-stops, maybe we won't get into all of that right now, but T-stops have to do with light transmission. They take into account the optics of the lens, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so two new lenses here. And there's two articles on News Shooter about this. One that's sort of an announcement about the lenses, and then hands-on that Elliott Smith did. So we'll see here, that's the 18-55. Here are the two lenses on FS7 series cameras, and they are small little lenses. They both have a macro mode. I haven't read too much about them. I mean, I've read enough to have a conversation with you guys about it, and that's what the lens looks like on the camera body. And if you know how big the FS7 and the FS7 series are, then you know what that is. So IP film and video, yeah. So, you know, for me, what's interesting about these lenses are, first of all, you know, what they are. So they are basically two focal range zoom lenses that I think will fit a huge number of people in the market. When we talk about, you know, just sort of range, to me, you know, an 18 millimeter, you know, lens on the zoom, or focal range on the zoom lens is, you know, is a good wide lens, especially when you're using it with a super 35 millimeter sensored camera. So of course it's a little bit different when we talk about full frame, but when we're talking about super 35, then that's going to be a longer field of view. So, and there it is, by the way, there's Elliott using the actual lens there. And the 50-135 will not be available as soon as the 18-55. The cost of the lens, I believe, is about $3,700 US, which is pretty phenomenal for a Cine style or Cine zoom lens. And it's a 200-degree travel path in terms of focus. So not as long as some Cine lenses, but you know, definitely a lot longer than you would get in just a still lens that's on the market. These are manual lenses. So please understand that. And the question from Old Wave 1, the old guy, until he gives me a name, or well, I guess it is a guy, is no EF mount. And this is the big discussion. This is an E-mount only lens system. 18-55, 50-135 are going to cover pretty much the focal range lenses that most people would want to use in production. I think that the big thing here is that in order to get that lens to be that compact, use that amount of glass or less glass than you would get for different lens mounts. They decided, with a growing market with E-mount, that it made sense for them to make these lenses. EF mount would need to cover full frame, so it would be a much larger lens. Yes, it would. And even if they did a super 35 millimeter version of that lens, and they wanted it to be 18 millimeters wide, it would be a honker. There's certain focal range lenses. Sorry about hitting that, guys. There's certain focal range ranges that when you're building a lens, or even if you're building a component of groups and the parts that need to go into a lens for a zoom lens, that require a lot more glass than other focal ranges. And so a good example of that is a 50 millimeter focal range. You can actually produce an exceptionally sharp 50 millimeter lens, and it does not have to be incredibly large. It's just something that has to do with that focal length and what you need in order to do that. Generally, if you look at an 85 millimeter lens, it's considerably larger for the most part than a 50 millimeter lens, and 18 millimeter lens can actually be quite large as well. So when you're trying to build all of that stuff into a zoom lens, especially a Cine zoom where you don't want it to breathe, where when you're changing basically focus, you don't want it to look like it's inhaling and exhaling, you could wind up with and using a tremendous amount of glass for that type of thing. Now, the advantage for E-mount is the very, very small flange depth, and they can design a lens that's just for that mount, and then they are able to build something that's more compact. And so they figured out what those focal range focal range would be, and then they built the lens for that. You know, we have seen lenses that have come to market. For instance, Canon has the 18-80. It's a very, very different category of lens. And so it's hard to compare that because it has electronics to communicate with the EF mount, and you can use it with the dual pixel CMOS AF autofocus system and a bunch of other stuff. And so it's not apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And that's just the way it goes with all of these lenses. A lens that I'm very interested in is the lightweight zoom that's coming from ZEISS. That's a 21-100. Wish it was a little bit wider, 18 millimeter, but I've actually shot with that lens and I am very, very impressed with it. But these look to be pretty phenomenal. And the 50-135 will probably, which will be available, I believe, in the summer, come in at a similar price point. So you could have a set of these if you're shooting with E-mount cameras, and it would cost less than $8,000 US, at less than $4,000 US a piece. Let me see what we got. To my knowledge, these are not full frame coverage. I do need to look into that. If somebody knows, then please answer that here. I think that the reason that these were designed was for E-mount, but I don't know what happens when we put these on the A7 series, especially something like the A7S II. Let me just go ahead and turn that off. Let me just see. E-mount lenses can't be adapted. Yes, exactly. So Bart knows the whole deal here. So the thing is that with E-mount, that because of flange depth, the distance between basically the sensor and the optics for the lens is so small, you can adapt almost any lens in the world to E-mount using adapters because they generally have a bigger flange distance than E-mount does. The disadvantage to E-mount is you can't do the thing the other way until somebody comes up with some sort of strange, reverse engineered, quantum physics-y, crazy stuff. I know I'm not making any sense. But the point is that you can't really take E-mount lenses and adapt them to other lens mount systems. That's just a reality of optics and distance and all the other stuff that comes into play. And that's the sticking point for Jeremy. I currently shoot FS7, but if I change camera manufacturers, I'd like to take the lenses with me. And that is, in fact, an absolutely kind of accurate way of summing it all up. If you think you're going to be shooting the FS series of cameras for video and filmmaking applications for the relatively long future from now, that also doesn't make any sense, but you're going to be shooting that way for a while, then these lenses may make a lot of sense. And they are priced in the owner-operator price range for certain people who are making an investment into a camera body, let's say the FS7 Mark II. The interesting thing will be to see whether or not these lenses and this mount will be something that will have a broader application in the future. And I don't mean that other companies are going to be making E-mount lenses. I'm just wondering when we start to get into the replacements for the F-series Sony cameras, the F5 and the F55, whether or not they will change from the FZ or FZ, depending on how you like to say it, lens mount, or if they will in fact switch to this lockable E-mount that is on the new FS7 Mark II. So it's hard to say where Sony's going to go with that. There is in one of the two news shooter articles something where there was mentioned that it wasn't as easy to mount these Fujinons to that lockable E-mount, though we'll just kind of have to see how that all plays out once these things are shipping. Bart does know quantum physics, so he will get onto this right away for us, and he'll figure out a way that we can take E-mount lenses and we can adapt them to other camera systems. So I think that really this is what it boils down to, is it's a Fujinon knows how to make lenses. They know how to make beautiful lenses. And I have no doubt in my mind that these lenses will be able to produce very pretty pictures. I believe they're parfocal. They're going to have little to no breathing. And so these are all going to be advantages. They're geared. They're exactly the same size. They're exactly the same weight, which is freaking awesome because when you're swapping out that 18 to 55 with the 50 to 135, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to rebalance your camera. They've really thought this out very, very seriously. And because they saw, again, this growing market with E-mount, I think this makes a lot of sense. Does that mean, maybe somebody will know this, does it mean we have to use it in crop mode on the A7 series? I'm not sure. They are geared for follow focus. They have standard fizz, controls. So focus, iris, and zoom. And yes, so Bart, I just said that. So I have answered that question. So they're not only the same size and the same weight, but they're geared in exactly the same place. So as a set, at least for me personally, when I'm thinking about shooting super 35 millimeter sensors, 18 to 135 pretty much floats the boat for me. I can pretty much cover everything I want. That said, the consideration for me is that I don't shoot E-mount all the time. I've shot a lot of content in the last year plus on the FS7, a little bit on the FS5, though I prefer the FS7 a lot over that camera. But I think that your big consideration is whether or not you can take these lenses with you. My guess is because they're Fujinon lenses, they're going to have good resale value. So I would say that if you are going to consider buying these and you're already into a camera like the FS7 or you're going into the FS7 Mark II, that we'll have to see and we'll probably know by NAB where Sony's going to go with sort of their next iteration of the F series, again, F5, F55 cameras. If they switch to E-mount for that, then of course that broadens where you can actually use these lenses. While they're small, compact zooms, I think that adapting them and using them on A7 series cameras doesn't always make the most sense. The whole reason that you're going small with mirrorless is because you're going small. But again, we'll have to see where the A7 series goes. If it follows the same track as the GH5 does. And today, by the way, Sony announced incredibly fast SD cards. If you want to look that up, ridiculously, it's like 299 megabytes per second. Maybe those cards are going to become the XQD cards of the A7 series. They're not those cards, but they're G series cards that would be able to handle very, very high data rates. And if we get 10-bit 422 recording at high data rates in the next A7 series, then you may want to use lenses like this. I'm still partial to ZEISS in many ways because what I love about ZEISS's approach is even on the lightweight zoom, which is designed for Super 35 or smaller sensors, the lens mount is adaptable to virtually any camera system. You can change that lens mount. So you can have it be an E mount. You can also adapt it to EF mount and PL mount. They've essentially built into the lens the changes that are necessary, or in the mounts in terms of the flange distance. So whether or not Fujinon can do something like that to these lenses in the future, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be that they have built them with that purpose. The 21 to 100 lightweight zoom from ZEISS is going to be under $10,000. It's going to cover that entire range though. And again, I'd like it to be just a wee bit wider, but I think that that's going to be okay. So might take a look at renting these next time I shoot something narrative with the FS7. If they can cover that range and replace a nice prime set, I could work a lot faster. Absolutely, Bart. I mean, we're starting to see some really exciting stuff happen in the world of lenses right now. And to me, what is the most exciting is that we're starting to see manufacturers build lenses and design lenses that are in line price-wise with the camera systems that we're now buying. So it used to cost an absolute bloody fortune to invest in really good Cine zoom lenses and also Cine primes. And I think that the market is starting to adjust to the types of cameras that people are buying as owner operators. And those are cameras like the C300 Mark II, the FS7 Mark II, cameras like the Panasonic LT, the Vericam LT, and things like that. So it's pretty exciting stuff, and this to me has sort of been, I mean, I would even say sort of the middle to the end of last year, the sort of golden age, I think, of what we'll look at in terms of lens design and manufacturing. So I'm super excited. I mean, I've shot with still lenses and I've geared them, the Otis lenses from ZEISS, and I absolutely love them. They are beasts, but the picture quality is exceptional. And for cinema lenses, even though they're still lenses that can get rehoused or you gear, they're relatively inexpensive. If you're comparing them to Cook or Master Primes or Super Speeds and things like that, so it's pretty exciting. I'm down to about 3 minutes here, so I will say if you want some more information about the stuff that I do, then please visit the C47.com, and there's other videos here on the YouTube channel. Also, if you like the content that you are seeing here and you like to be able to interact, please subscribe by using the link over there. Jeremy says, do you know if there is certain look or color cast with the Fuji lenses? Would they cut well with ZEISS MILVUS, for example? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I have not shot Fujinon lenses very much at all, so I don't know what their sort of look is overall, whether they're warm, more towards the sort of Canon side, or a little bit cooler, more towards the ZEISS side. I will do a little research on that, try to find out some more information. All of the ZEISS lenses are designed to work together, so if you're shooting with 1 or 2 MILVUS lenses and you bring an Otis lens in there, and then for some reason, because of your application, you decide to go ahead and use a bodice lens, then they all are designed to work together in terms of stuff. Now, you have to account for other things when you're doing that, and the one thing that you really have to account for is mixing camera systems, because that in many ways is one of the biggest things that's going to change the way your image looks, because everybody has a different color science. There's different data rates being recorded, different bit depths in terms of color and everything else, and that's probably even more important. So that's what color charts are for. Throw one up on a production. You can take a one-shot chart, the one-shot chart from DSC Labs, or you can take the video color checker and put that up from X-Rite, and roll camera on that. And there are those scopes in post that we can use both for our waveform monitor and also for our vector scope. And when you are shooting with these different cameras and different lenses, it will help you get things to where they need to be a little bit easier. So maybe that's a conversation for another episode. It is 12:59 p.m. and I have to pack everything up and be out of here in about 15 minutes for the airport. I do appreciate everybody coming by. I love to see people showing up here as an audience. I will not be doing a live stream on Friday because I will be in training with ARRI at the ARRI Academy, but I will do something. I will try to post something on Friday, and then probably back with a live stream from the studio that I'll be getting ready for a shoot with next week. Thanks for watching.